Welcome everybody to today's webinar, 10 Strategies to Boost Your Email Campaign Performance. Just to ensure you can hear me loud and clear, can you say, or type rather I should say, can you type hello into your chat window? Maybe you can tell us the weather in your local area just to make sure that you can all hear me loud and clear. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. We have a hello from Rachel. Hey, hi Rachel. Louise, and okay, it's grey and overcast in London. Yeah, I can vouch for that. Brilliant. Okay, so you're all responding nicely, so that's fantastic. You can all hear me. Grey in Edinburgh, says Keith. Okay, so that's great. Hi everybody. Just a quick introduction. So my name is Jonathan Sape. I am the founder of eMarketeers, and we're very pleased to have you all here today from across the globe. We've got a good attendance today, and really appreciate you signing in. Just a bit of housekeeping. Firstly, we'd like to apologize to anyone who tried logging into this webinar 2 weeks ago. We had a local broadband outage at our local exchange, and because of that we had lots of technical issues, and I'm really sorry about that, but we're very glad to have some of you back today. Regarding today's webinar, Tim will be speaking for about 35 minutes, so that means we'll have around 5 to 10 minutes for questions at the end. By all means, write down your questions and add them into your questions window in your software, and I will, during the webinar, take a look at the questions and try and hopefully give some of them to Tim at the end. If we haven't answered everybody's questions, by all means, email me after this webinar and we will do our best to follow up. Just to let you know, we're also recording this webinar, so we will upload a recording and the slides to our blog by either today or Monday, and that will be at www.emarketeers.com. So just a quick introduction to Tim, and then we'll crack on. So Tim is an email consultant and strategist. He's got over 8 years experience living and breathing email marketing. His focus is helping brands with their email communication strategy, and of course improving their performance and ROI. He's an elected member of the DMA's Email Council, the Direct Marketing Association's Email Council. He's worked with brands including the IDM and Smart Insights, and he was formerly a director with Email Vision. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Tim and he will continue. So Tim, away you go.
Hi there, Jonathan. Thank you very much, and also thank you to everybody joining. I really appreciate you spending your next 35 minutes with me. As Jonathan says, let me tell you why I think that's a good investment of your time for the next 35 minutes. Simply, I spend all of my time thinking about email marketing 24/7. All I do is email, which means I get to see more campaigns, more different brands doing more different things and trying different things than most other people have the chance to do, which really means I can give you some good advice here today. So I hope this is going to be a really valuable use of your time, and I appreciate you giving it to me now. Jonathan said I work for the DMA. I also do guest tutoring for the IDM and blog as well at Zetasphere. I blog on Smart Insights. So that's me as the consultant, the day job. Let's crack on then with how we're going to help you boost your email marketing. First thing is simply send more email. It's the simplest thing to do. Every campaign generates a response. Every campaign generates revenue. So if you send more email, then you're going to generate more response and more revenue. And I think very often people are trying to work out how to send less email rather than trying to work out how to send more email. And sending less email is quite easy. You just stop sending, but you stop getting revenue as well. So the challenge is, how can you send more email? Because more email is a key way of driving more revenue and response. After all, if you're trying to send less email because you don't think people are happy with what you're sending, all you're doing is sending poor value and poor content less often. And that's certainly not a strategy to high performance. You know, the strategy to high performance is to send more email and to achieve that by being more relevant and more targeted. But possibly even the frequency you've got currently could be upped. If you're sending once a month, I mean, some B2B brands are sending one email a month, monthly newsletter, you know, why not divide that content and send it out twice a month? If you're a B2C brand and you're already sending twice a week or 3 times a week, you know, you could try adding in a weekend. Most people are focused on Monday to Friday. Sunday is probably the bigger shopping day of the weekend, bigger than Saturday for very many people. Why not send an email on the Sunday as well? So look at, have you pushed the frequency? Are you sending the right frequency? And if you're a little bit uncertain about upping your frequency, then run a split test, because that's the only way you're going to know, is take one group of people and run a higher frequency than the other group and see what happens after 6 weeks. Or if you've got a major event, a major promotion, try temporarily increasing your frequency. So you don't always have to send with the same frequency. You can vary it, change your cadence. So reduce it when there's less offers going on and less things to talk about, and then increase it when you've got more to talk about. If you're building up to a major promotion or a major event of some sort, why not do 5 emails, 6 emails over 14 days and build up on the pressure around the actual event. But the key lesson is really send more and work out how you're going to be able to send more and for your customers to be happy with sending more. And of course, a lot of people are focused on the open rate, and they're worried about sending higher frequency because they think that the open rate's going to go down and they're going to get poorer performance. Well, that's kind of true. If you send higher frequency campaigns and you haven't done anything to increase the value in them, then it's quite likely the open rate will go down. But it still drives more traffic. Look at this scenario here. We've got a monthly campaign going out to 50,000 people. Open rate 15%, fairly typical. Click rate 5%. It generates 2,500 clicks. What happens if we split that monthly campaign and half the content, send it out twice a month? Then we reduce the open rate, and we're going to reduce the click rate because we're sending more frequently. So click rate, say it drops 5% to 4%, that's a 20% decrease. What happens in terms of total clicks in the month? We get 4,000 clicks. So we've still generated more traffic, and more traffic means more revenue, more engagement. So looking at campaign rates doesn't really give you the whole picture, particularly when you're working on frequency. You've got to look at overall engagement across customers and not across campaigns. You've got to look at traffic. Unsubscribe rates don't tend to vary on a campaign basis. You will have obviously more list attrition because you're sending more opportunities to unsubscribe, but the reality is you generate more traffic and more revenue than the unsubscribes. And if you were to be worried about the unsubscribes, you're really effectively paying to keep people on your list. Number 2 booster, add trigger emails into your bulk emails campaigns. The classic trigger email, I would say nowadays, is the basket abandon. If you're doing any sort of B2C, 6 out of 10 baskets are abandoned, very common sort of number. A basket abandon email can bring back up to 20% of those abandoners. It can just be a simple, helpful nudge email. It doesn't necessarily have to have an incentive. Obviously, an incentive reduces your profit. It may not even be necessary. Just a timely, by the way, there's a shopping basket here and it's got some things in. Would you like to complete? Go back and review it. That can be enough to get the purchase. It certainly adds revenue. And if you're already sending a basket abandon email, fantastic. Have you considered the timing? Have you got the timing correct? If it's after 2 or 3 days, maybe you need to reduce that. Many people now are doing basket abandon emails within a few hours, even as close as 1 hour from the basket abandon. But also, if you've got a basket abandon email, how about a second one? You could do one really fast, one after 1-2 hours, and then another one within 1 or 2 days. But triggers aren't limited to basket abandon, of course. Anywhere where you can get a trigger email, it has such perfect timing that relevance of the timing makes them really powerful. And whilst they're only going to be small in volume terms, they very often can be high contributors in revenue terms. Here's one from Amazon, a browse abandon. If you go and browse around the Amazon website and you look at some products and you don't buy any particular product, then you're likely to get an email from them suggesting other products that are the same type that you browsed. Browse and abandon emails are probably now going to be sort of the hitter for everybody who's got basket abandon in place. Browse abandon is the next sort of email that's being put in place now. And you notice on this one, we've even got a nice pre-header on that email saying, since you viewed Bosch 36, the EcoFlex electric lawnmower and so on. So it's very tailored to the particular product that was being abandoned. Another trigger email, repurchase, replenishment emails. If you've got any sort of product with a natural repurchase cycle, whether that's disposable contact lenses, replaceable toothbrush heads, filters for ventilation systems, annual policies such as insurance, then any sort of predictable cycle of replenishment, a trigger email when you expect someone to need more of that particular product, works very nicely to get the revenue in. So think about trigger emails in terms of where you can slot them into the customer life cycle, the purchase life cycle. Really, any multi-step process you have on your website, if you've got any sort of new account setup process, any sort of quoting process where people actually have to put in a few details before they can get a quote, anything where you're asking people to do multiple steps online, then capturing the email address at the first step and following up for people who've abandoned that process will bring them back into the process. It's a very powerful way to boost your revenue. Number 3 booster, online list growth. I mean, quite simply, more email addresses does equal more revenue. And I'm not talking about bulking out your email list with rubbish, of course, buying badly targeted data or dodgy purchase data from eBay, anything like that. I'm talking about, quality data, but you're really looking for quality of and quantity of data. Very often people have got their list growth in place, but they don't go back and review it on a regular basis or look at some missed opportunities to grow the list. And more email addresses is more revenue. So on your website, the classic place to collect email addresses, have you given sufficient focus to collecting the email address? Here from Copyblog on the right-hand side, we've got a nice big panel which tells us what we're going to get. It gives us some social proof about 170,000 people, really giving us an easy opportunity to drop our email address in there. But it doesn't need to be above the fold or below the fold. Maybe you've got in the footer, you've got an email address collection. Why not do it in both? It's not an either-or choice. You can put a collection of email addresses in multiple places on your website. If you're just asking on the home page, that may not be the most engaging page on your website. How about run of site? How about putting it on all of your pages? Look at different ways you can collect it on your website as well. It doesn't just need to be one process. And pop-ups, don't be shy to ask. Being interruptive can work. It does work. Pop-ups work for many, many people. And I know they have a bad reputation and some people dislike them because they are interruptive. However, you've got to consider the interruptiveness and the value of the email address. Here we've got Andrew Mark, very nice pop-up with a hello sexy attention grabbing. And look where you're immediately engaging customers. This is an example we use at Zetasphere. At the end of our blog posts, we have a big bold box saying, if you like this article, then get free updates. Because the point is, when someone has just done something with you where they're maximally engaged, so they've just read a blog post and they think it's terrific, they get to the end and you ask for the email address at that point because they like you, they trust you, they've valued something you've done at that point. So always consider where's the best place to ask for an email address in terms of when someone is maximally engaged with you, when someone's just had a good experience with you. That's when to go for the kill and ask for the email address. And improving the relevance of the ask. Great example from Kissmetrics where they doubled their lead capture rate and they looked at their pages and found out which pages had high bounce rates, and they actually used pop-ups on those pages. But they did something a little bit more clever still. Not only did they use pop-ups on those pages to capture email addresses, because simply people were bouncing off too soon, not coming back to them, but they also made that pop-up relevant to the web page. So people looking at a web page about Facebook, then it popped up with a little morsel of, would you like a Facebook timeline marketing guide, give us your email address, and if they're looking about Twitter, then it offers some Twitter ebook. So if you can make that pop-up even more relevant to what the content was that someone's just looking at, what they're going to get, that's going to make it work even better. So growth in email lists is driven by asking for more often. If you ask at the top of the page, the bottom of the page, the run of the site. If you ask in more places, how about in your social channels? How about Facebook ads or the new Twitter cards capability? Part of a video call to action if you're running any sort of videos. And ask more effectively, have you stated the incentives and the benefit clearly. Asking people to join a list doesn't work well. What you need to do is to explain to people the value of being on your list. They're looking for reasons and value for being on the list, and also instant gratification. What sort of download can they get, or what sort of incentive will they get? Number 4 is offline. If you're a business which has got offline as well as online touch points, have you really integrated list growth into your offline capability? For people with retail shop outlets, increasingly popular are email receipts. And this is from Y Receipts here, where they've given the capability to the checkout to collect an email address, and they're finding that 40% of the customers going in store will choose to have an emailed receipt, and of course at that point the email address is captured and you're able to further market. And before Christmas, Hawkin's Bazaar were running a simple scratch card at the till, where if you made a purchase, you're given a scratch card, you scratch it off, find you've got 3 space hoppers, you go online to check what your prize is, and of course your email address is being captured. And that had a high participant rate, and they were capturing a lot of email addresses that way. And using SMS in offline media, asking people to go to a website is not as easy as asking people to SMS an email address. This is something used by Deal Monster in adverts that they run in their newspapers, where they say text deal and your email address, and you collect the email address that way. So again, thinking about making it easy and increasing the number of touch points. Mobile-friendly design. I mean, over 50% of emails are now read on mobile phones. Of course, if the email isn't easily read, it's really a waste of time. Responsive design is the most advanced technique for email design for mobile phones, where the email automatically adapts according to the device. On the left, I've got the email from Tesco Direct, which is looking at it on the desktop, and on the right, I've got the same email but being viewed on a mobile phone. And you can see there's some changes there. That header bar has been cut down from 6 items to 3 items on the mobile phone. And the images have been scaled down. You'll see the product image hasn't been changed much, but the header image has been reduced a lot more in size because it's less important than products. So it's dynamically changing the elements on the page and the size of them. This center block that you see on the desktop is just totally removed within the mobile version. They've chosen to say, well, it's not such an important purchase item. We'd rather dedicate the space we have on a mobile to the other things and pull people into the store where you can actually then consider offering more products. And from PayPal here, you can see down the bottom we've got horizontal links restacked into vertical button links, which is quite common interface now for mobile phones, is a sort of vertical button layout. So the things you can do with responsive design are hide content on a mobile, you can change font sizes, change the email width, resize images, restack modules into columns, change the navigation. And is it worth it? This is a split test from Zeta Interactive, where they took 12 brands and they ran the same creative and offer, and they ran a responsive and non-responsive design email, so one made for the mobile and one not made for the mobile. And they found that on average the click rate increase was 8.75%. So it's a respectable increase in click rate. I don't think it's quite the sort of increase that maybe some people have been talking about, mobile being catastrophic for email marketing. Far from that. If you're doing any sort of design changes, then think about mobile design. Try and make it easy for people to read and click on your mobile as well. Booster number 6, plain is not dull. I think everybody's so keen on graphical emails, we forget that sometimes a simple text message can be a really good way of communicating with someone. This example here from SureTel is the 3rd email in a nurture sequence of 3 emails. And they've gone for very plain looking text email. They've been ignored 3 times at this point, so they're trying something different. What does a graphical email with pictures and starbursts and products all over it say to people? It says marketing. Immediately says marketing, and people might disengage at that point. When that happens, then we can maybe use text to get through to them, to get through to their inbox so they can read it and understand it. And also with this particular email from SureTel, they've made a very nice job of making it very personal sounding, and it's got some lovely copy in there, quite a nice light-hearted copy, but it's written on a one-to-one sort of personal nature. And you're going to open it up, and rather than looking at pictures, you get drawn into the copy and drawn into the conversation. Amazon Web Services, B2B email, again, text-based email. But it doesn't just apply to B2B companies. I've worked with B2C companies where we've run text-based emails, and we can find that we can reach people with a text-based email that we might not reach with a graphical one. We've run split tests with those sorts of things. For win-back, it can work very well as well. If it is B2B, consider the from name of your email and making it the name of the account manager too. Booster number 7, subject line testing. I mean, subject lines just are that important. I know we talk about them so much in email marketing, but they really are critical. Whereas people are opening the email, there's also a lot of people who are looking at the subject line and reading it and choosing not to open. And it's probably 30–40% of your list may be looking at the subject line. And they see it, they just choose not to open it because of what's said in the subject line. So consider testing different approaches to your subject line, and if you can, split test the different approaches. But don't just make minor changes. Don't just sort of fiddle with a theme of changing the particular words and the types of things you're saying, but try more significant different approaches to what you're asking, what you're saying. Here's 4 common things. Be really clear, specific, and simple. Clarity is often a big winner in email marketing. People are very short on time. They don't want to spend a lot of time trying to work out what it is you're trying to say. So if you can be very clear and very to the point about the value that you're offering, just answer that question, why the email should be read. If someone reads the subject line and goes, I know why I should read this email, that's great. But there are other approaches, and they can work. Questioning. An email that creates an open loop of thought and just kind of hints that the rest of the thought or the answer to that question is in the email content can create the open. Or intrigue, where people want to solve the mystery. And personalized subject lines. Personalized classically, of course, is using someone's first name or their last name in the subject line. And like it, dislike it, hate it, love it personally, consider it that it's spam-like or not. The reality is, in test after test, adding name to subject line does increase the click rates and the open rates. Test it for your list. I'd be surprised if it's different to that, but certainly it's worth testing. But it doesn't just have to be the name. If you've got anything else that you can talk about, any other data points on the person, if you know what sort of products they've got, if it's relevant to that product, then use the product that they've got in the subject line because they're going to spot it. If it's something they've done with you before, if they've previously attended an event, the name of the event in the subject line. Anything that you can do so they immediately identify the relevance to them and their world will increase it. So personalize the subject line and look for opportunities to personalize beyond just the name. So I've got some examples of different approaches here. This is an example of using clarity. Well, there's some different ones. The first one is got intrigue, love the smell of petrol. The last one is got clarity, it's time for the World Series by Renault at Silverstone. The clip uplift of the first to last is 77%. So here, very simple, clarity was the winner. But with the same database, there was tested some for a different event for the launch of the Renault Megane, a different approach, and in this case, Tight Taut Tune, the last one there, which is obviously very intrigue-based, was the winner. The click uplift was 86%. This is one of the problems with intrigue, is it's quite hard to get right. Tight Taut Tune clearly fits with the brand image, and it's got that sense of promiscuous about it, which perhaps Love the Smell of Petrol doesn't have. Whether you could work that out without testing, it's not a matter. But you can see that these approaches can work, and you sometimes need to persevere at them. And questioning, this is from marketing experiments. Their last subject line here in this test was, do your landing pages pass this test, question mark. That was the winner, 128% uplift on some of those others. I mean, the third from bottom there, a scientific way to increase your conversions. That's more of the simple clarity way to talk to someone. In this case, a questioning way was better. What I would say is if you haven't got the time to test or you haven't got the ability to test for some reason, I would err on the side of going for simple and clarity over the other approaches. If you've got the time and the opportunity to experiment with a few little different things, then try these other approaches too. But most of all, if you are doing split testing, remember you need to have big enough sample sizes. That really means a sample size of about 3,000 people in each split test. Use a calculator to check that your results are valid, the one that we provide for free of use at Zetasphere, AB Calculator, so you can check that your results are valid. Number 8 booster, add a segment. Segments performance increase of times 6 to times 2 to times 6 performance increase, not uncommon by adding a segment. Start simple. If you're not doing any segmentation at all, then start simple. Determine which single data point most easily differentiates customer interests and types of customers. If you can find 1 or 2 pieces of data that maximally separate your customers from each other and their interests and their offers that they're going to be interested in, then build those particular data points into part of your data collection strategy. And segmentation and data really do have to be very strategic because you can't change your mind quickly about data. You have to make the right choices and go consistently with it. So what will really quickly differentiate customers, how you're going to collect that data, and then start segmenting on it. And the key here is when you don't have a segment for someone is not to send no email necessarily, but to send the default email that you would have sent anyway. So where you can segment, and where you can't, that doesn't mean to say you should ignore people and send them nothing. Send them the email that you would have sent if you hadn't been segmenting in the first place. Social sharing. See, obviously a lot of people looking to do social sharing and try and get people to engage from the email into social networks. Typically the advice is make sure you put social share icons in your email and the footer or the header, and I think probably just about every brand, major brand I look at probably has got social sharing icons somewhere in it. I can tell you now that it will make practically zero difference to your performance. I've looked after many campaigns and looked at the results time and time again. Social sharing icons really don't get clicked. Very often they're clicked less often than an unsubscribe link. If you've got space in your email, go ahead, put the social sharing icons in, but really it's not going to be the biggest hitter for you. If you're really looking to try and get interaction on your social networks, this isn't the way to do it. The way to do it is to put all the energy into promoting the social network and the share that you would use for any other sort of campaign objective. A small icon is not going to do it, but give it a reason for it to click and give it a big button and give it all of the space in email you'd like to give an objective. That's how you're going to get social sharing. This example from LinkedIn, some of you may have saw this last year, where they sent out an email telling people how popular they were. Obviously massaged people's egos. They suggested that people share the news that someone was in the top 1% of LinkedIn profiles or the top 5%. And of course, massaging egos was the perfect incentive for people to share. More simply from Sony on Pinterest, just telling people about the different Pinterest boards they've got and suggesting they follow for more information about particular brands and products they may be interested in. And finally, from Dorothy Perkins, they're looking to get a social interaction here by making that part of the objective of a competition to meet Courtney Kim and so on. And finally, there's a final boost, look at including video. It's getting more and more popular now, video and content marketing through video. If you can incorporate video into your emails, example from Wistia, the video hosting provider, this is an email of theirs. It literally doesn't have anything in it other than the prompt, choosing the right microphone for your video and the play button. There isn't anything else in this email. It just says if you want to know how to choose the right microphone, then you click the play button to find out. And that's a still frame in the email that takes you to a landing page. And here from HubSpot, they've got a video again using the still frame, and most video embedded in email isn't really embedded, it's just an image of the still frame from the video picking a video frame that's a more interesting one, which isn't necessarily the first frame of the video, but one which actually is engaging and gets a bit of intrigue, make that into an image, put a play button on top, drop it into the email. Then when people click on it, they go to the landing page. It is possible to embed video into emails and make it play on some devices. However, the question as to why you'd want to do that, one, do you want to do it? What's the advantage? After all, people still have to click to play. For the user experience, clicking a still image that takes you to the landing page isn't very different in experience, and it does mean that you've already got someone on the landing page where you can continue the journey. Whereas if they watch a video inside the email, then they're going to watch it. At the end of it, then they've got to click something to continue the journey on your website. I've heard split test on video can increase click rates by up to sort of 300%. But it's important that the video is actually consistent with what the campaign's about. So it's no good taking some random video that you've got which is unrelated to your objective for this particular campaign or doesn't demonstrate the product of the campaign and putting that in. You've got to put in the right video. It would be a bit like saying, let's put in some extra copy into an email because it makes it more engaging, and it's not really the copy appropriate to the email. So think about the right video for the email, take the right still frame, put a play button on top of it, make it engaging, and then just embed that. And so with that, I'd like to hand back to Jonathan and hope you found that helpful, and ask if, Jonathan, you've got any questions.
Thanks, Tim. That's really fascinating insights into email strategies and tactics. Yeah, just a couple of questions. On the subject of video, what email clients or email readers can actually play video from within an email? I mean, is it a high proportion of email readers, or are we talking some very sort of specialist ones? Any insight on that one?
Sure, and that's a good question. If you want to have live video embedded in the email itself, then HTML5 will allow video to be played in email. Basically, it's the HTML5 email clients, which tends to be mobile phones. Certainly the iPhone supports video and email. Depending on what apps and so on people are using, some Android have capability. But it's not, it's not a broad support. So you need a fallback where you've got a still video frame for some people, like Outlook doesn't support it and so on. And you can have live video for other people.
So you are running a risk by not considering a fallback option from the sounds of it.
You definitely need to have a fallback option.
Yeah. Okay. Another question. We have and a very common question. This one. I've got a relatively small subscriber list. Can I do subject line testing? So in other words, my data size isn't huge. Is it going to be meaningful if I do A/B testing for subject lines? What are your thoughts, Tim?
Yeah, there is a challenge, particularly I think B2B marketers tend to have smaller lists than B2C, and therefore have more of a challenge with subject line testing. And if you've got a list of 1,000 people, you decide to do 2 splits of 500 each, it's really not going to give you a reliable result. So don't waste your time doing it. The only way you can really look at doing any sort of learnings on those very small B2B lists is to run the same test hypothesis over multiple campaigns. So if you were really saying, should we be using a questioning approach in our emails as opposed to a very sort of clarity-based approach, then split the list and over 4 or 5 campaigns, just run the different test hypotheses over several campaigns and aggregate the results.
Great idea. Yeah.
It's certainly a way of doing it. If it's a way, it's not going to give you the fastest process, and I'd sort of say, well, maybe stick to best practice in some instances and just learn from other people's test results and understand that, because you might spend more time testing it than it's worth at that point. But that's certainly an approach you can take.
No, it's a great idea, yeah. And the final question, and it's funny actually because we have this argument at work a lot. If I send more email, won't it cause increase unsubscribes and therefore reduce my list size? It's something we debate at work continually. What is our frequency? What are your thoughts on that? I mean, you mentioned that sending more is generally better, but if we're getting lots of unsubscribes, would you say frequency is excessive?
I guess it depends on what lots of unsubscribes means, but the reality is that the unsubscribe rates, unsubscribe rates tend to be, 0.1%, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, maybe 0.5 if you've got, if your content really is a bit poor or the list collection process hasn't been entirely clean. But if your unsubscribe rate's in those range, then what you're seeing by sending higher frequency is more unsubscribe opportunities, which causes your list to reduce faster due to unsubscribes. Very often you're losing the people who really weren't going to engage with you anyway.
Right.
What you've done is you've effectively finally persuaded them to unsubscribe because they've decided they're really not the best mates with you anymore and you aren't the ideal person for them, so they're going to unsubscribe that way. So sometimes you're losing people who perhaps really weren't that important to you. In an instance where you're losing people who were still potential prospects for you, you've got to look at the other side of the coin and say, well, by communicating more frequently with people, how much additional engagement did we get in return for losing those few people? And the numbers and the campaigns I've seen and worked on, you find that the cost of trying to keep people on your list is so high that it makes no sense. You're better off saying, let's take the additional engagement and revenue from the people who are engaged with us, and if that means there's a few more people going to leave us, that cost is far less than the value of the additional engagement we've driven.
It's interesting, actually. We were doing some filming yesterday on e-learning for email marketing, and a lovely analogy I came across was that email marketing is like a relationship. You nurture relationships, with presents and gifts and nice dates and what have you. But if a relationship needs to end and there's no hope in it, then of course it needs to end and you depart, and I suppose the same applies to unsubscribes. If, like you said, if people are going to unsubscribe, the chances are they're probably not going to engage with you anyway, so move on, kind of thing. So yeah, I completely concur on that one.
Yeah, it's quite possible you've just persuaded the people to finally divorce you, who've been wanting to divorce you for ages and just haven't been bothered to do it. So.
Exactly.
but I think that's certainly a factor. But the bigger side is that the upside is far bigger than the downside. Ultimately.
Sure. Brilliant. Well, look, Tim, thank you very much for the insight. Just for the rest of you guys, just to let you know, the deck you've just seen and the recording of this will be available on our blog shortly. And thank you very much for attending today. Next week, if you're interested, we have a webinar run by one of our trainers, Anne-Marie Hanlon, and she'll be talking about 5 critical components underpinning your digital strategy. So if you're a digital marketer and you're suddenly faced with having to write a digital strategy document or come up with a digital strategy plan, she's going to talk about 5 critical components that will help you do that. So that should be a fascinating webinar. So we look forward to possibly seeing you on Friday. And Tim, once again, thank you very much. And goodbye, and have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for your time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.